Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, another Monday, another set of events in South Africa. It never stops. This is a country that produces news all the time. I mean, if you wake up every morning to look at the headlines across the board, it's amazing. It's amazing. But we are here again with WorldView, where we explore everyone's perspectives on all those things that can broaden our world perspective. So again, we have my buddy here, my co-host Tepo Matsiba, and today we're also joined by Frank Bolt and Professor Venant Boshoff, who will join us. I think he's still trying to work out his computer. He's an education professional. He's been an academic. He is also an MP for the FF Plus. And Frank has done a lot of work, auditing work for a number of academic institutions in South Africa. He knows the ins and outs of many of the politics, the shenanigans that happen in those areas. We've tried to invite a few other people to join this discussion this evening, but it's amazing how many people are afraid to come and join. Even in the last time, this is the second time we're hosting this discussion, by the way. Some of you would already know. Each time we try, even people who speak on other platforms are afraid to come and engage with us on this one, which is a bit of a disappointment, but we're going to continue the discussion anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, Tsepo, hi.
Hi, good evening, Soli. So good to be here, and good evening to Frank. I think the South African news calendar, of course, does not stop giving. With now, it looks very likely that the two key contestants for the top job of the ANC and ultimately the top job of South Africa, it seems like it's the Cyril Ramaphosa and Dr. Zweli Mkhize, former Minister of Health, who will be running against one another. As to how they deal with the similarities or the almost synonyms between the two, that of being challenged with corruption, allegations of corruptions, when you look at Dr. Mkhize and his link to digital vibes, and then President, of course, Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the ANC and President of South Africa, having this a cloud of Phala farm hanging over his head. Those parallels will be fascinating in the next couple of weeks as we run up towards the Nasrec conference. But we are here to discuss something else today, to talk about the state of South African tertiary institutions, the South African University, and most notably the University of South Africa, and perhaps as well the University of Cape Town.
But before you do that, Tsepo, and you started touching on the ANC. The ANC remains the Monkulu part of South African politics. It's really hard to discuss South Africa without discussing the ANC. I mean, I see now they're trying to bring in the former Vice President, Ms. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, as a potential candidate for vice presidency under Ramaphosa, of course, if he manages to hold on. But this is precisely what Zuma did when he brought in Ramaphosa. He brought in somebody who had a relatively cleaner record and ethical standing, and look at where he's at now. I think Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka needs to think really seriously before she accepts to leave the glory of a United Nations job back into South African politics. Ekurhuleni has a new mayor, or the old one is back in action. Let's hope that things become more stable in the lead up to the 2024 elections. Johannesburg, is Palazzi going to stay? We're still going to watch that one. Tshwane, is anything going to happen there? We're also watching that one. But let's go to the University of Cape Town. A lot has been happening last night, and I don't know. Frank, what do you make of it?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the 3 judges and 2 other panel specialists being appointed after a very, very long debate and argument and walkout by the VC at about 10 o'clock last night. Lawyers now being approached to take the battle up for the university and the VC. So it would be interesting to see who the 2 experts, why experts in this group, to see what has taken place at the university.
Right. Yeah. She seems to be having a good life. I see somebody saying, it's a Pinar van Beek says she's filming videos in her garden again today. That's what she does. She does. Have you been on to Professor Pakeng's Instagram page or TikTok? I think she's on TikTok, LinkedIn. She gets all these fancy videos of herself walking in beautiful dresses. Like, she's no care in the world. I mean, she's a really interesting vice chancellor.
Sally,
Yeah. Can you hear me?
yeah, Sally, just to say that she's on sabbatical, so it's time
Oh.
off, so she can be in the garden.
I thought
I'll
she's
put
back
it on.
now. Is she not back? I thought she was back. As soon as there was
I
trouble
think
at the
she's still
university,
still in sabbatical,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I got the impression that she came back as soon as trouble was brewing on campus.
Whether
anyway,
she revoked her sabbatical, I don't know. Yeah.
Right. Well, let's welcome Professor Boshoff. Prof, hello. Good evening.
Hello. Thank you. I can hear you. I'm not a professor.
Okay, you're an MP. Are you a politician?
Yes. I take it as a compliment that you might confuse me with a professor, but not this time.
That's okay. You have worked in academic institutions at senior level, so you have a view. Of course, now as part of your portfolio in Parliament, you're looking at what's going on in the education sector. So you do have a perspective to share from that platform, as it were.
I hope so. Yes.
What do you make?
Indeed.
I'd like us to have a conversation about generally it looks like there's a transformation onslaught on South African higher education institutions. And some of it is probably going right. Some of it doesn't seem to be going right. Pakeng and those who support her seem to be saying, well, these people who are standing up against us actually people who are anti-transformation. What we're really doing here is what is expected of us. I mean, what do you make of all of this? I mean, the politics and then now they're talking even of factions, and in the latest coverage of what happened last night is some people who stood up and walk away. Some people were told to shut up in the middle of council meetings. I mean, this is all new.
Yes, I think much of the perceived academic decorum is not it's not the reality anymore. I think one of the problems is that we in South Africa is in a kind of a cultural clash. We regard ourselves as post-colonial, but there are some of the let's say the institutions inherited from colonial times, which play a central role in our whole society. And how are we going to deal with it? How are we going to act in a post-colonial way, and in a transformed way, yet not losing the gains and the institutions, which are very important. If I can say from the perspective of the higher education committee, portfolio committee in which I serve, the committee, especially the ANC members, are very much committed to transformation, and they focus a lot on the numbers game. How many black, female, age group, and then maybe a little bit later, they might ask about the performance. Now, as a matter of fact, they don't take to it kindly if I say they perceive performance less important than demography. But in fact, it seems to be the case. And I think that South Africa is not the better for it. We still have wonderful institutions, academic institutions. Once I made the remark that 100 years ago, the University of Cape Town was a Bush University, or the University of Witwatersrand, or Pretoria, or Stellenbosch, because the real guys with real money, they send their children overseas to go and study there, but only the one would send their children to domestic universities. But the focus on quality, and we are going to make this as good as possible, led to the fact that one looks at these institutions now as first-rate institutions. And that is exactly what should happen with all our institutions, so that there won't be mentioning of historical disadvantaged institutions or historical what do you call it,
legacy,
advanced.
heritage, right? Okay.
Yeah. So it's not disregarding the fact that let's call it the Wits, Aatjies, Tuks, Stellenbosch, and the like had some funding privileges in the past, which had not been the case with other universities. But in a sense, one has to make it your case to really bridge that gap. And that should be the intention of all of us who are involved in higher education.
Right.
Yeah, I'm struggling with picking up what exactly the key issues are if we start only at the University of Cape Town. I mean, many years ago, I wrote a letter as a student to the then Minister of Higher Education, Professor Kada Asmal, the late, I think, Professor Kada Asmal. And in that letter, I was saying that we're inviting him to speak at a conference at an institution where I was studying, and to address the national plan on higher education. I used your words, Wynand, and I said some of your words, and I said this plan is supposedly going to help us to bridge the gap between the previously disadvantaged institutions and those that are sort of advantaged. And he was very angry with me. In fact, he declined to speak at the event, and he wrote me a very long letter in that decline about the conversation. But I got a sense that you are saying what we are facing today. So I used to work for the University of South Africa's business school. And some of the discussions about transformation in higher education, transformation in the academic core. I would argue that academically speaking, if you just separate for a second the academic core and administration, academically speaking, South African institutions on the whole seem to have a very clear picture about transformation, in the sense that it does not get mixed up with performance. And that was sort of clear for me. Where things become blurry or became blurry, for example, at UNISA, when we were looking at discussions between council and the student representatives, where things get blurry is at management and almost governance council level, and if you separate that from things like Senate. But what would you say, given that background, what would you say are the core issues currently? If we start at we can amplify what we are seeing about the University of South Africa, about UNISA. But what's actually happening? What are the issues at UCT in your observation?
Are you asking me?
Yes, Wynand.
Yes. As a matter of fact, we asked to be taken into confidence at the University of Cape Town in exactly what's happening there, but the portfolio committee have not yet received an invitation to visit. So I have a little bit of a distanced view and a second-hand view, if you like. I'm not even an old student of the university, but what we have noticed is exactly what you mentioned, that within Senate and the top management level, there's, if I may use the word, faction fighting in many of the different institutions. And it is as if these institutions, which are really powerful, and it is a platform on which to build a name, as if people want to build an empire if I could call it like that. And of course, then you have many different perspectives on that. Some who would maybe like to maintain only an academic approach to university, others who might be busy with their own interests. And then, of course, we have this difference between, is a university a fountain of knowledge? Should the vice chancellor or the rector be the main philosopher, if you want, or is it a business? And should the vice chancellor be the CEO of the business? It's two quite distinct, views of reality with which one works, and all of that creates room for contestation. Many of the differences are based on assumptions, which are not necessarily declared, because one just knows it to be like this, and another person knows it to be the opposite. And it seems to me that we have this problem, of which UCT is one of the institutions which largely succeeded in getting around that. We have had problems with CPUT just around the corner of UCT. We had some problems with several institutions, especially I think the universities of technology have had a hard time transitioning from technicons to what exactly is a university of technology. And I think many times these kind of underlying issues are not really discussed, and then it manifests in kind of management differences.
Yeah, it seems like when I look at the comments here, it seems like we're struggling to strike a balance between performance and transformation. And maybe we're not even clear about what it means to transform a university. I mean, a university that is performing, that has a good name globally in terms of global rankings, or with its continental global rankings, where that has sent amazing people, scholars across the world, that has received a lot of interesting or worked on interesting global research projects. Surely, when you say let's transform it, you can't just focus on changing the numbers, which seems to be the problem in a lot of these places. And there's very little regard given to how do we make sure that we change the numbers in terms of skin color of people, while we maintain, and actually not just maintain, but grow the standard, while we remain the best institutions around. It seems like people want to shine on the basis that they've transformed the organization, but a lot of times we end up bringing in the wrong people. I mean, if I look at UCT, is a very interesting case for me. If you look at where it comes from, and of course transformation is necessary, but then we have to agree what it means. You look at the number of people who have stood up in support of Pakeng, or who stood up, if we just look at last night's meeting only, people who stood up and shouted, F you here, F you there, I'm standing up, they walked out, they're all black people. I mean, I don't even see colored people there. Okay, Marine Leroux, who's the person who decided, look, this meeting has to go ahead last night, and we have to chair this meeting until we come up to a resolution on appointing a panel of experts to look into what's been going on here. But there seems to be very few people, so it seems like let's chase away all these people, or as many of them as possible, and just keep and grow the number of Black Africans irrespective. And I'm not sure that we're doing the right. I have to be careful here, but I'm not sure that we're doing the right thing in maintaining or some of the excellence that we are. Maybe we don't agree on what excellence is. Tsepo, I don't know. What's excellence? What's academic excellence in a 2022 South Africa?
Yeah, so for me, and I'm not an academic, but we've always, as students, been taught that institutions of higher learning have to be the centers of generating new knowledge and new ideas. And I speak quite often about this subject, where there are a lot of individuals, experts who study PhDs. But when you look at, especially here on African soil, but when you look at what they are studying and the kind of knowledge they are producing, it's probably, one would argue that some of it is peripheral and personal interest sort of inquiries, as opposed to producing new knowledge that help us solve current and problems that we are likely to face in the near future. So the level of research output at some of the institutions that we're talking about is gradually dwindling, besides also the level of quality of that research, so that it can help us to solve problems. If you go and look at Europe and Asia and look at what people are producing, the type of knowledge that they're producing knowledge that can help solve problems now. And I think on the whole here, we have a lot of these doctors of philosophy, and they are studying very, quite often, very strange subjects. There was a chap that I worked with at the SBL at UNISA, and he was an expert in robotics. And at that time, and I'm talking about 2004, 5, 6, and at that time, I wondered what he was going to help us to resolve here as an expert here in South Africa. But I think going back to the question of transformation, I think we are not entirely open and honest about what's happening at the University of Cape Town without very first-hand knowledge. One gets a sense that there are two or more factions, and there are those who are completely opposed to transformation, in the sense that Phakeng, as a leader, poses a different type of threat to an existing core of highly powerful system that almost believes that they own an institution called the University of Cape Town. So they won't let go, and they don't want to see alternative views. That she, from time to time, walks on a garden, or from time to time walks a dog. I mean, that's a function of personal choice and personal interest, and that she does from time to time put on makeup and she looks great. That's completely irrelevant. I think what should be more important is whether, at the governance point of view and administration point of view, whether she was running a tight ship at the University of Cape Town, and whether she was driving the right type of behavior, especially one that has to do with producing that all-important innovation and research output. And I think from what we were seeing over the last couple of years, I think she's been doing a brilliant job. I mean, we've seen some accolades that she received internationally, that the institution continued to receive. Unless someone gives us insights about different views, it does seem like the institution is caught between what UNISA was caught in many, many years ago, when before the likes of Dr. Bani Pichana or Professor Bani Pichana came into the University of South Africa, where you had a large cohort of people that supported Professor Melk. But anyway, the question I had was still, what are the fundamentals that are taking place there that we don't know of, or that no one is willing to talk about?
Yeah, but come on, sir. But I mean, Frank, before you come in, we see a lot of academics who have nothing to do with politics, who don't seem to be gay about, but walking away from an institution. You can't look away from the fact that she comes with a management style that's putting a lot of people off. Okay, and you can't come in and let people go and get them to sign secret documents so they don't tell the world, especially South African, what. So I don't think Youth Women is innocent. We'll see what the report comes, what the panel comes back with. But given the number of people who have complained about her management style, you can't ignore that. You really can't. The fact that she's black, wait. The fact that she's black and she's getting all these accolades doesn't mean that she's a good manager. Not everyone who has a PhD is a good manager of people or knows how to work with people. She is something about the way she does things is putting people off. And the fact that people have been made to sign documents is a key thing. Those people are not able to tell us what made them walk away. Only one lady stood up and said, you know what? That's not true. I'm not going to walk away and keep quiet in the face of this lie. We have to look at those things. I mean, we can't defend somebody because she has a PhD. Come on. Or she's a professor. Or she's a doctor. And so, Frank.
Yeah, can I come in here and say that, when she came in, she probably wanted a new team, how that team was made up, and longevity of that team, and with the experience of the rest of the academic staff. and I've seen it where in other universities that experience is absolutely pushed out. All right, and it's extremely sad to see. And when you sit on a commission of inquiry, which I did, okay, with Central University of Technology, and you see these hard-working academics that were pushed out by the VC in that instance, okay, and that same VC now sits at DUT, okay, and took on the Department of Higher Education and through the courts, the high courts of Bloemfontein, okay, and the top end of the academic folk just allow them to move from one university to the next. If you look at some of the stats, since 2000, we've probably had 20 independent assessors going into the universities. And quite a bit of this is to do with transformation and obviously financial. A lot have been under financial strain in this process. So where am I leading this to? I'm leading to is the fact that you come in and you change it around, but you can't let experience go. And it seems that the top end of universities have done it, have been allowed to do it, and continue to do it.
Yeah. Can I just, Professor Wayne, before you come in, I just want to pose, maybe let me read a few comments first, because we have awesome people who follow us every week, and I think they also contribute handsomely to some of these conversations, to all of our conversations. So, what university is useless, says Volganti Freebus. Joking at he says, I struggle to find many graduates who have degrees with a basic and sound reasoning capability. It is no longer a place of best idea wins out. It's just about activism and who conforms. Transformation, my ops, that's Volganti again. So true, too much politics, way too little quality education. Still talking about transformation is ridiculous. Pathetic, something transformation. Instead of us running to historical white institutes and changing it, why not build our own institutions? And this is the question I want to ask here. You see AfriForum putting money aside to build Afrikaans universities, and people say, yeah, you raise it and whatever else they throw at them. How about somebody like Patrice Motsepe or some of these black, billionaires building a university from scratch in the African sense, so there's no need, there will not be a need for transformation for it. It'll be built the way it should be, right, in the African sense. I don't know, whatever you mean by that, because it seems to be like there are challenges coming into an institution that was built maybe decades or hundreds of years ago, and that has been run in a particular way. I'm not saying, listen, this is not an argument against transformation. I'm saying there's a culture in which that institution has been built, it's been functioning, it's grown into world class, okay? And then you bring a bunch of people who said, nope, we don't want this. You must change the number of people. You must change even now, if you ask people, what is a transformed curriculum? Up until if you put 10 people in front of you, you're going to have 10 answers. So we still seem to be struggling about what we really want a university to look like in South Africa in 2022 or 23 or 24. Maybe let's start from scratch. Instead of trying to take an old monument and paint it in our colors, let's build our own monument the way we want to build monuments. How about that?
But Solly, we currently have 3 new universities.
Yes.
Okay.
Which one of them is doing really well, the way we want it to be?
Well, you would think that 3 brand new ones coming through in the last 4 years or so, okay, with the knowledge of the past and looking towards the future, that the management and higher education department would have formulated and identified what would be needed, okay, and it seems not, and I go in saying that currently there are about 5 or 6 crises in national education. You got UNISA, you got the National Schools Fund, you've got Walter Sisulu University again, you got NEPAS, okay, and now you got MUT, let alone UCT. So 6 out of 26 says a good percentage. So it's more than transformation here, okay?
So what's going on?
So what is going on, you know? And you, wonderful, yes, free education. But if you look at the stats and what the stats are saying, how student debt has increased, okay? We're talking billions of rands. We're talking 17, 18 billion rand of student fees outstanding. That's going to have to be written off or found funding.
Yeah, but is it because there are many poor students who have come into these institutions, or is it because these institutions don't manage the funds that are given to them properly? Maybe Vaynard, who knows? I don't know.
So if I can come in from a number point of view, okay, is that, you know, the student funding scheme is for parents that up to remuneration of 350,000 rand. Okay. Now, if you go into the top branded universities and what it costs to become a student in those universities, these parents would have to be earning more than 350,000 rand to take their child there. So what you've got is fudging on one side in terms of getting the bursary for free, and then on the other side you've got hard-working middle class that can't afford, okay, and are falling behind. So you've got a financial model that is not working in one aspect. You've got the high end of academic that have their own rules and terms and conditions, and obviously work with politicians because of the checkbook.
Right. Gentlemen, Tsepo, Vaynard?
No, I'm very interested to hear Vaynard's, sorry, you was cut off earlier, just his view about what's happening specifically. I mean, Frank has just unpacked some of the systemic issues that we are seeing in higher education, but what's happening specifically at UCT in the interest of progress, in terms of whether there are underlying issues around transformation or whether there are other issues that we don't see or we don't hear about.
Yes, that's exactly what I would prefer not to say too much about because of my lack of information about what's happening inside the UCT. I have a better view on what's happening on the broad scene of higher education. And you mentioned starting something from scratch. And I would like to refer to two quite different examples. The one is a Saltpike University in Kimberley, which does very well. I'm actually really, I shouldn't say surprised, but I'm really impressed on how well Saltpike University is doing and how it's coming up, you know, a young and upcoming university, if there's something like that. And then on the other hand, we had the CETAs and the National Skills Fund created out of the Skills Development Levy, which is 1% of the total South African salary account. It's quite a large number. It's something like 16 billion rand a year. If you think that the whole Department of Science and Innovation with the HSRC, the CSIR, the National Research Foundation, many institutions under that umbrella has only a budget of some 10 billion. And the Skills Development Levy on its own has a 16 billion rand income. And yet it's hardly a mess. It's a new bureaucracy for skills development, which is a waste of money to a large extent. So one can say, let's start from the beginning. Let's do this from scratch, and we can do it in a transformed way from the very outset. And then you can have success like with Saltpike, or you can have a you know, really big problem like with the Skills Development Levy. And to me, a lot is around how the community is involved in this thing. The Saltpike University is actually a project of the whole of the Northern Cape. And although many of the academics are imported from elsewhere, the pride that the Northern Cape, its government, but also its ordinary people take in having this university is something extraordinary, and it makes a huge difference. Now, one of the problems is when universities alienate their alumni community, because that is a community who in the first place put the university on the map over generations, not just over years, over generations, who performed the kind of work which made a university which it is. And if you say, okay, now we are going to transform this university, so if you are an alumnus or alumna and you retire, we are very glad because we can replace you with some transformed appointment. While the correct way to approach this, to my mind, would be to say, what would we have done if we were a developmental state or a developing state, and we could acquire some international expertise? You would import those people, you would pay them something like danger pay or whatever you would call it, to come and live in a far off country from their perspective. For us, it's the center of the world, but for them, it's a far off country. And you're going to make the most of them and let them train as many of your own people as possible in order to create an indigenous academic elite.
So where would such people come from, more or less? Give an example.
Can I come in? Sorry.
Yeah, no, just before you do that, Frank, I'm asking this question because would they come from France, from America, from UK, from Finland, or would they come from Nigeria or from Ghana? You see, the thing is, I mean, the whole part of the bigger problem is these institutions are not African enough. I don't know. If you ask me what does it mean to be African, I would not know how to give an answer. Whenever a premier says that, why is everyone talking about race? It doesn't matter if someone is black, white, or orange. What's important is having capable and competent individuals. But I mean, these are conversations we're having, right? Are we going to, how much focus do we give on quality, and what does quality mean? What does transformed mean? And how much quality focus do we place on ensuring that the standards are world-class and they're also relevant to what the economy and the growing economy of the country requires over the short to medium to long term, rather?
Yeah, I just want to complete the line of thought to say that in South Africa, that core of academics has been here. Many of them are white. Many of them are Afrikaans speaking.
Well, they're being kicked out.
Yes, exactly. One could say we really need you to train and to mentor as many new academics as possible. And we nurture you because you are from Africa, you choose to be from Africa, but whether it's due to previous advantage status or whatever, you have some knowledge and skills, and we really need you to invest it. But the opposite strategy to say, okay, we can't wait to get rid of you. You know, you referred to UNISA, Chepo. I know somebody who had been working in the IT division, and as people retired who really knew the system, new people were appointed who actually just thought, okay, we need to replace the system, but while it's not replaced, it has to be operated, until about 2 or 3 people were left who really could manage the system. And when this person retired, she thought, in a sense, maybe, they'll ask me to just assist for another few months to train somebody. But they didn't. They gave the impression that, well, that's wonderful because we can make yet another transformed appointment. And the fact that the NISA IT system is one of its low points at the moment is it's beyond dispute. Everybody knows it. And that's exactly the problem. Not utilizing the people you have and who choose to be here. You don't need to pay them danger pay. They want to be here. They just want to contribute.
Frank, you want to say something?
Yeah, look, and I'm going to refer to Walter Sisulu University, where we have, to the best of my knowledge, Cuban, Indian, from West Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, professors that have been appointed, and at certain times, the Vice Chancellor appointed someone out of the West Indies who was family related. Okay, so you bring these individuals into your universities, but there's a fundamental, I think, problem in the screening of these individuals. You know, and they want to be there. All right, and what are their aims? Some of it has worked. You know, the Cuban doctors at Walter Sisulu University Hospital, phenomenal, absolutely done wonders. Okay. But there are others in that university that they just there for the money, you know,
right.
and to have a freebie. Okay, so it's screening. I think is very important if you're going to bring in skills from the rest of the world, and more so. And then when they are in, and moving around to the various other universities, more screening. Why are they moving? Okay.
Okay. Sepa doesn't seem to be happy that we've given him or you guys have given him the answers to what exactly is going on at UCT. Maynard is not too. I mean, I appreciate that you feel too far away.
So,
no, actually, I'm not unhappy.
Okay.
I think there's and that's why I was talking about contributing to new knowledge from the outset, and research output as a core principle that our universities should espouse. But I don't think we can lean over transformation and say, well, if you run a JSE listed company, as an example, we can only solve transformation by saying anyone who wants to transform or who thinks that we need to represent the demographics of the country, that we need to go and start another JSE listed company to have that discussion. I think that would be overly simplistic, especially in higher education, because these institutions are actually public funded by the purse of South Africa. Of course, they've got their own funding initiatives, especially institutions like UCT, but there is a degree of funding from the state. And so we can't completely say, let's go and start. Talking about actually the newer institutions, I mean, when you look at the University of Mpumalanga, you see some positive energy and some positive development in that institution. I don't think at any particular point things will be completely perfect. But if we were as a country to start distilling and making a very, very clear distinction about what needs to happen in the academic landscape versus the administration landscape. Because for me, what sounds like a bigger problem at our institutions, having experienced some of this at the University of South Africa at UNISA, the issues are actually on the administrative part, the management, where individuals are supposed to run the institution, almost someone said as a CEO, if we could make that analogy, and they seem to be doing something else from time to time, either due to issues of corruption that we hear, allegations of corruption that we hear a lot in an institution called UNISA in Pretoria, and of course sometimes it's a function of incompetence, that we appoint the wrong people to the wrong roles. But I wouldn't say that there is a permanent crisis in the academic cohort of the institutions. I think it's this management part that we're struggling with, and I wonder whether the Department of Higher Education has a role to play in helping us to figure out, to strengthen governance at a management level, because at the moment we are just, the lines are too blurred, and we're not dealing with the core issues, and some of the core issues are really a poor management function or poor governance function than the academic performance or academic excellence.
Tsepo, there's one here for you. Every time I hear Tsepo, it becomes more and more clear that he is actually highly intelligent and has his pulse on Africa. Yes, one day, Zebo. Yes, yeah, look, guys, gentlemen, here's the question. Usually when they talk about transformation, if we go back to some of the narrative during the feast must fall, it's not just about replacing Bernard with Soli, or Frank with Tsepo, or Pinky, or Ramaphosa, or whatever. It's also, people have also made a lot of noise about a transformed curriculum. So what does it mean? I mean, can we talk to that a little bit? How do you guys understand transformed curriculum as opposed to, is it changing some of the characters in history or adding some African elements into the history, into the stories? What does it mean? What is a transformed curriculum? Renard?
Yeah, I think that's one of the problems that a group has to solve within and, from itself. I draw very much in the present day discussions on the history of my own people, of Afrikaners, who entered the 20th century beaten, military, impoverished by war, and highly unqualified and unsuitable for the modern economy in which it could rebuild itself. And then it made my ancestors, in that sense, made a deliberate choice. Two things. The one is, we are going to tackle this new modern world within our own identity and our own language. We are going to do it in the mother tongue. We are not going to do it by medium of English. The second one is, we are really going to tackle it, to take the bull by the horns, and to show these other guys, the English ones, whose world we invaded in a certain sense, because the economy, academics, all that were dominated by English-speaking people at that moment, and we are going to tackle it by being at least as good, or we are even going to try to be better. And then we had to transform the contents, and it was a constant debate. How are we going to deal with it? My mother still went to school and she had to learn everything about mountains and rivers in England, but nothing about South Africa. Now, that was transformed in a 1940s kind of way, in which Afrikaners thought. Now this has to be done once again, and there's nobody with the answer in capital letters. This is something that will have to be negotiated. It will be a tug of war. Some people would want more emphasis on that, others on this. And it's something that evolves. It's not something which is inserted at a certain stage. Now, it's not an answer. Well, I think one calls it the dialogical kind of solution.
Dialogical, yes. Frank, before you come in, I need to it's a follow-up, but maybe Frank, you'll respond to this. The English people dominated and did things largely for themselves. I mean, we hear a lot of Afrikaans people complaining, the whole, the suffering they went through, concentration camps and that sort of thing. When the Afrikaners took over through the NP in 1949, 48, they did things. So the whole apartheid placed Afrikaans at the center of it. Remember, there were even attempts to force Black people to learn everything in Afrikaans. So everything was about Afrikaans people. Now, in 1994, we have a new dispensation that says, let's take care of everybody. Doesn't it make things a bit complicated? Because it's not like the Black people, at least through the 94 dispensation, for which followed, but then the multi-party talks, we didn't say now is the turn for Black people, everybody else must fall back. The English did it, the Africans did it, but now we're trying to please everybody. Isn't it the problem that we're now saying, let's create a South Africa for everybody, not just for Blacks? Of course, we need to take care of all those for Black people to the extent that they were marginalized for all the reasons that we know. But the Constitution now is not saying Africans to the sea, English people to the sea, but all South Africans belong. How do you balance that up?
Sorry, if being the number man, quality versus quantity, okay, and lowering the bar okay,
Mm-hmm.
by pressure from the political side to do transformation, okay, and I am one of the first to say every child should get the best education, all right, that can take place. But when it comes to higher education, there's a percentage of our students that should be there and not quantity, okay, and and get the basics right, the foundation levels, your secondary school levels, and then push up. But you're not doing that. You've lowered right to the bottom, okay, and you got to start there,
Okay.
and you can see it with the amount of years that it's taking to get a student through a 3-year degree or a 4-year degree. Okay, it could be 5, 7 years. It's not sustainable.
Okay. Seba, before you take over, I just want to make the remark about the listed company that you made earlier. What I'm saying is not that the existing institutions should not have a level of transformation. What I'm saying is it would be, or would it not be easier to start afresh instead of saying, let's take a monument that is already existing and transform it? Would it not be wise to invest more energy and resources in creating new institutions or new companies that don't have to struggle with who owns them, who controls them? I mean, surely it makes sense that I start my own company and go and fight over somebody else's company needing to be changed into the way I want it to be. Really, no. I'm not saying the other ones shouldn't be.
I mean, you and I are entrepreneurs, so I think I tend to agree with you in that space. That actually, and that's why the very important example of Sol Plaatje University and also the University of Mpumalanga, for example, where it's shifting things, shifting the dial, especially in the agricultural sector. You are beginning to see a positive change. But your earlier question about how do we transform even the ideology of learning, perhaps around how do we decolonize a system that was created with a certain intent in mind, in a positive and constructive manner, without necessarily blindly removing competent people from roles and responsibilities, and replacing them with either inexperienced people or incompetent people. I think that would be the failure, and that's why I make a very clear distinction between academia and management, or academia and administration. And very often it looks like in the administration we have a linkage more towards a political rhetoric, and in academia we focus on the work, and maybe there needs to be more thinking about how do we bolster the administrative part of these institutions of higher learning, so that you not only have competent managers, but you have competent managers who understand the specialist relevance and of academic institutions.
Right,
As an
right.
example, we are currently having a debate about whether ESCOM, an institution like ESCOM, should be led by someone who understands the energy generation processes. And similarly, you've got to begin maybe to ask questions about who is actually administering these institutions. Do they appreciate the academic value and the value of education in actually shifting the dial for our own economy and society? And I think that's where I would pack it in terms of how do we deal with these patterns of problems, and making a clear distinction between admin and academia, and maybe supporting the excellence that's happening in academia, but finding ways to fix this political jargon, this political crisis called administration.
I want to read one comment there by Vut Zarko. He says, I found young teachers straight out of university are highly woke. They mostly embrace liberal talking points and are very much indoctrinated. I have no idea what that means. Can somebody explain that to me? What do you think that means? Indoctrinated? They're woke?
I struggle.
Wayne, do you understand what this could be meaning?
Yes, I have some idea. Although I haven't had the same experience with young teachers, but the whole I would describe it as accepting the narrative which puts white people and everything which is actually the domination of the past in the what's the beskuldigde bank, the accused bank, you know, it's and to embrace that narrative as if it is an objective truth, and not knowing exactly how to show enough remorse. And that is often highly irritating to people with other views on history and on identity and on the self. So I think that's what it refers to.
Okay.
And I also believe that universities do quite a bit of, you know, put a bit of effort into confronting especially white students with other perspective on the history. I always have this saying that if you read history, you need to see the other guy's point, but you still need to be able to see your own point also. So I think that people struggle with that. Either they see the other viewpoint or they see their own, but people tend to struggle to see both and to realize that both are in a certain sense, you know, legitimate.
Yeah, we have a few more minutes to finish. What do you think should happen at UCT? Oh, Frank, you want to say something? Maybe answer.
Sorry, before you go to UCT and academic versus, not versus administration, but academic and administration together, all right, play a vital role in the makeup of the university. But my experience, okay, in terms of academic and the amount of time that they are in the lecture room, the amount of time they are spending on the student is a very interesting stat. And I can tell you it's shocking, all right? And it's sad, okay? And it leads to management, okay? It leads to council, it leads to the vice chancellor, okay? It's in that aspect. The vice chancellor is an academic and needs to get that student through, and it's not happening. The amount of time not in a student environment,
right,
is yeah.
It's endangered, so they're spending less and less time. So what are they doing?
Yes,
what do they do? Are they doing their own PhDs while they study?
Yeah, they're more interested in getting their paper printed and being at a conference.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Okay, gentlemen. Maybe just to finish off, Tsepo, you want to do the closing, but Venant, what do you think should happen at UCT and other universities going through the same thing as your parting shots?
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit idealistic to put it this way, but people need to put the institution and academy as a whole above themselves. People should really be servants of something bigger than themselves. It is when the ego, and I don't know any of the people personally, I shouldn't say it in such a way that it might seem like a reflection on certain individuals. But in general, you know, academy is bigger than all of us together, than all academics together. It's the world of knowledge, and it's a world of thinking, and it's a process of, you know, lighting the fire for the next generation and together with the next generation. And it would be very well if people would really perceive it in that way.
Igosa says transformation in South Africa is predominantly based on revenge of the pain of apartheid. Hence, they directly destroy what was meant to last and thrive. This is really sad. Atsepo, your parting shots?
Yeah, no, in my parting shots, I think we need to invest far more in this discussion about the role of tertiary institutions as enablers of the economy. Because if we're only going to grow this economy if we stop bickering. You know, in an environment that they find themselves in where there's freedom of academic inquiry, you expect a lot more than what we are seeing right now across different institutions. And today, we only, on my side, highlighted the University of Cape Town and, of course, the University of South Africa, where there are administrative disasters, and then of course there's bickering at other institutions. You expect actually academics to and of course the leadership of universities to actually seize the moment and help us solve the complex problems that we're facing in this country, as opposed to investing in this bickering and selflessness. And it's time perhaps for us to start talking about the new South African universities. And I totally believe that there is opportunity and there are capable people across, especially in the academic corps, who are capable to deliver. I think we also have competent administrators, but we need to talk openly about the difficulties we are facing. And a little bit of scrutiny on this institution doesn't do any harm. So I appreciate this conversation.
Thank you. Frank, a last word, or did you say a last word?
Last word is that we as taxpayers of this country provide 26% of our budget to education, and it's not going far, and we need to readdress why. Okay, and I think I agree. This discussion needs to be taken further.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm sure you have also been looking at the comments. We have been mentioned. People are appreciative of your sagesse, your wisdom. I also agree that we should continue this conversation. UCT is still happening, and probably other universities that some of you have mentioned during this discussion. There are things happening at those universities that we need to look at as we go forward, and hopefully come back with solutions. I really do appreciate all of these people who take the time to be part of these conversations, to share their insights. Some of the comments were not so cool. Please leave out the daily words and the insults, because they don't really contribute to enhancing a conversation that embraces us all. Please, okay, just try and be a bit more constructive. This is Solim Wang, Tsepoma and Tsepoma Seba at WorldView, hosting Frank and Bernard. Thank you very much. We'll see you again next week.
Okay, sorry.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.